Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Development Control B. My name's Kathie Guthrie, and I'm the chairman today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that you maintain social distancing from all other persons whilst in the chamber and in the communal areas. Please ensure that you wear a face covering at all times unless you are sitting down, or if you are exempt from doing so, and that you use the hand sanitizer and wipes provided. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt the other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. We will be using e-voting for this meeting on the Modern Gov app. So please could members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. And I do apologise, my computer is at home, so I will be giving my votes verbally. I would like to remind everybody present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. If you hear the alarm, leave the building immediately via the fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium ground floor area and walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts, and do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. So can we have the introductions, please? Ian Dupre, our legal advisor.
Morning, Madam Chairman.
Gemma Walker, our area planning manager. Robert Carmichael, the governance officer. Case officers Vincent Pearce and Michael Brooker over the back. And we do have Alicia, who's driving our live stream, and we also have a trainee who's Bethany, who's sitting at the back there. So that's all the people here. So can I move to the agenda, please? Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies this morning from Councillor Peter Gould.
Thank you. To receive declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any to declare? No. Declarations of lobbying. Are there anything to declare? Well, I've got the right case. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of September, please.
Apologies, Chair. As the meeting was only 2 days ago, I have not had a chance to write up the minutes from that point.
I quite understand. We'll do that at the next meeting. Thank you. It is on our list. Right. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
And we'll do the matters in the order they appear. So we'll start with Great Bricett Business Park, and I'll invite Vincent Pearce to introduce the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, guests. As the Chair says, first item, Great Bricett Business Park in Great Bricett, and what we're looking at is a change of use of the land to site 69 mobile homes. This has been before your sister committee previously, where it was deferred, and so what I'm going to do this morning is take you through what we've discovered and what we've negotiated since that meeting. Essentially, previously, we were asked to get some additional details on parking provision to make sure that our floods and water colleagues are happy with the proposal, to look again at landscaping on the boundaries, and to provide members with details of bus routes that serve Great Bricett, and that is in your report. We've also been asked to confirm the number of units because there was some confusion, because some elements of the application suggested there might be 73 park home units. It is most definitely 69, and I have a layout to demonstrate that. The other area that we've been and looked at in more detail is securing an affordable housing contribution, which wasn't previously available. And I can confirm that yesterday evening we did receive a signed unilateral undertaking from the applicant in which he has committed to paying £168,000 towards off-site affordable homes. The unilateral undertaking does guarantee the delivery of footway improvements and a bus shelter. It also includes open space within the site, and I'll go into more detail of that as we go through. But just to familiarise the committee with the site, because you haven't seen it before, there it is in red. At the moment, a large part of that site is covered by old Nissen hut-style industrial buildings, hence the term business park. Footpath runs around the southern and eastern edge, and the settlement boundary sits there just to the west. Great Bricett sits to the northwest of Ipswich, very close to Wattisham Air Base. On the screen you can see flashing in white an existing park home centre known as Wicksfield Park. The site itself is accessed via Pound Hill, and as you can see the airfield sits very close to the west where the Apache helicopters are based. There's an example of some of the Nissen hut style buildings that are at the back of the site. So it is previously developed land, what we might have previously called brownfield land. This is some examples from the adjacent residential park, Wicksfield itself. This is an important photograph insofar as this is the entrance to Wicksfield Park, the adjacent site, and the white arrow shows where the public footpath, the footway starts that takes you into Wattisham. This proposal includes the provision of a footpath from the application site linking it to that section of footway. A very quick, if we can, fly through. What I need to do is try and get this to activate. Will it do it? No. What I was going to do is take you on a fly through, but seeing we can't, there is the existing holiday park. This is the site in here. And over here sits the the airfield. And this is Plough Road coming up through here. Existing dwellings in here, that's the settlement boundary. Here is a plan that shows the 69 park homes sitting to the south of the existing Wicksfield Park. This application is not submitted by the company that operates Wicksfield Park. So, first batch 14, 12, 13, 19, 11 is a total of 69 homes, and we're suggesting if members are minded to grant permission, we restrict the maximum number to 69. They are a range of 2 and 3 bedroom units of different sizes, and they're shown in the box in the corner. This is an example of the type of home that will be provided here in the event that members are minded to grant planning permission. So I think in terms of the look of them, they are perhaps, I was going to say unusual. I think in my mind I had a picture of a park home that was something far less elaborate and potentially good looking than this, and that may just be my naivety and ignorance about park homes. Suffolk County Councils, the Flood and Water Authority, are satisfied with this proposal, and they've suggested a number of conditions that we are perfectly happy to recommend to you in the event that you're minded to grant planning permission. So there is a drainage basin on this site that will take all the water. Here's the existing bus stop that sits at the top right left-hand corner, and the dotted line is the existing section of footway. What is proposed is to provide a new section of footway and a new bus shelter. So all the residents of this development could safely access both public transport and get into Wattisham. This is a simply technical drawing of the improvements to the footway. The bus shelter location is shown circled in blue. Question that came up last time is it possible to get from this site to bus and from bus by work and school? And the answer is, yes, you can. You can leave the site at just before 7:30. You can get into Ipswich by just before 8:30, and you can get to Suffolk 1 just before 9. You can get home from Suffolk 1 on bus. You can come back from work or shopping in Ipswich. The service would allow that. There's also a school bus that will get you to Stowmarket High and back, and there are other routes that get you to other locations. So I think we would say this is well connected by public transport. The full details are in your reports. In terms of parking for each park home, a quick example here is technically you have 2 spaces per park home. In terms of the landscaping, members previously were concerned that because this sits on the edge of open countryside, the landscaping buffer wasn't robust enough, and that is a view that we shared, and we have gone away and the applicants have agreed to reinforce and enhance the landscaping on the boundaries. So if we take them in turn, on that exposed southeastern corner, we now have reinforced planting along the entire eastern boundary and on the southeastern boundary. So in time, this site will be completely softened by mature planting. Remember, these are single-storey structures, so in no time at all, that tree and hedgerow will conceal them. Let's go back one. On the road frontage, we now have similar hedge and tree planting to ensure that the frontage from Plough Hill is green rather than looking into a home park development. And again, on the southern boundary, we have reinforced planting on the park side of the access road. That road already exists to serve the business park. So as I say, we do have the unilateral undertaking that delivers contributions for off-site affordable homes. We do have now a commitment to the footway connection and the bus shelter. We are recommending approval, as we did before, but just to be sure, we are suggesting a number of extra conditions. As I say, we would like to restrict the number to 69 to avoid any confusion later. We would like to restrict the use of the site for park homes as described and no other residential building or structure. Whilst permitted development may not apply, we want to be absolutely sure that there's no doubt, so we are suggesting a condition that says, for the avoidance of doubt, this development does not enjoy the benefit of permitted development. And the other conditions are suggested by our colleagues in floods and water. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Vincent. We obviously have the previous notes of the previous application, and these are the additional reasons. I was pleased to see that you'd managed to get the 106 of 168,000. Does Cllr come into this as well?
That's a very good question, and it's something that came up in the office on a similar site, and the answer is because people are living here permanently, it is a residential park. Yes, Cllr does apply in the normal way, subject to the same sorts of conditions, caveats and criteria. So yes, it does.
Thank you for that. Right, sorry about that, gentleman, I interrupted. Councillor Stringer, your question to the planning officer.
Yes, sorry, Chair. I've got quite a number. I'm really sorry. But it's important we get them answered. You said this was a brownfield site. I see a field with some, what looks like smart business units in one corner of it. Are they, the definition of brownfield is normally something that's then in disuse. So is all of this field in the brownfield definition? Because, I say, from the aerial shot, I see a green field with an element of... Yeah, fine. That's that one?
Can we get an answer to that?
Of course.
Yes, Councillor String, it does count as previously developed land. All of that site enjoys the benefit of business use. We will ask the guest, our speaker, to confirm which units are vacant. I'm not sure of the latest position, But I also draw your attention to the fact that there is an extant planning permission for 51 residential units on this site. I didn't mention that in my report, and to be fair, I should have done, but it is in the previous report. So, in a sense, we already have a backstop position of residential development.
Fine, that would have been really helpful. Next question. Is this site allocated in the joint local plan, but then the previous permission would sort of trump that anyway? I wanted to ask about more importantly, the sewage situation. Normally, the maximum amount of dwellings off a disc plant, off a plant, is normally 9. This isn't attached to the main sewage, is it? So normally, the manufacturers only allow 9 per treatment plant, 9 dwellings maximum. How will this work with 60 odd in one treatment plant? Because obviously we don't want to approve something that then create a problem elsewhere. I wanted to ask about the sewage. Done that one. Sorry.
Stop you there, Councillor. I know. Can we do them one at a time? But just on the back, it does. It is saying waste services, but that's not. That's waste for bins and stuff. So could you give us a hand on that one, please?
I have asked my colleague Gemma just to check the JLP to give us an update on the latest position. We'll report back. It is allocated as LSO1. LSO1. Thank you, Gemma. We haven't had any objections from the relevant drainage consultees. So that's not the answer you were looking for, but in terms of technical answer, it hasn't attracted an objection. In terms of the suggested conditions from our colleagues at Suffolk County in terms of surface water, I know you're talking about foul water, they're suggesting a condition to secure the details, technical details. We could do the same with foul water, so that we would require a strategy for surface and foul water. That way we could be absolutely sure that even though the relevant Drainage Authority Anglian Water has not objected, we would know exactly how the plant would be provided and operated to ensure the problems you've suggested might happen don't happen.
Excuse me interrupting, could we perhaps, should matters move forward, could we put that as an additional condition that is resolved? Anyway, but that's just a point for debate. I just wonder, Councillor.
Yeah, if I might just come back, this is the problem, because this will only figure in the assessment when it hits building regulations, and of course we have huge problems with this on other sites that operate like this, where we do get sewage running in public areas in these places because there isn't sufficient provision, and what you're being asked to approve here is something that won't work before you start. And a flooding authority won't pick up on it. It's your environmental health team.
Councillor,
or
you are
building
entering a
regulations
debate
team.
here.
Yeah,
You've asked your
fine.
question.
That's fine.
We can debate it and decide as we go forward.
The question would have been, are you satisfied that a planning condition will be able to bring about something that on paper at the moment we don't have evidence that will work?
I am, because if the technical advice we receive is it doesn't work, they won't be able to satisfy the condition, so we won't be able to discharge it. So what we would expect, we would word the condition were it to be recommended in such a way that they could not proceed until the foul drainage and the surface water drainage strategy had been approved and we knew what it was all about. And then we would require that strategy to be implemented.
And do you have further question, Councillor Stringer?
I think that's it.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Caston, then Councillor Muller.
Thank you. Cllr, I think I remember when we were first bringing out Cllr that we didn't charge Cllr on a floor space under 100 metres squared. And these, although it's in feet, but I believe that most of these, if not all of them, are under 100 metres squared. Can you just clear that up for me, please?
Again, I did ask this question not so long ago of our infrastructure team who are responsible for applying Cllr charging, and I asked them specifically in terms of this type of development of this size, and their answer was it is liable. Now that's not the answer necessarily you've asked me about the 100 square metres, but my answer is they know that this application, and they have advised me that it is still liable. I'm more than happy to go away and give you an update after this meeting as to how that is, but that is their answer.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Councillor Muller?
Thank you, Chair. Vince, can you just please confirm what provision there is for electrical charging points of vehicles on this site, please? Thank you.
That is a great question insofar as I haven't got details of electrical vehicle charging. And you're quite right, we're treating this as any other residential development, and we would expect electric vehicle charging. That can, as we've done elsewhere, be secured by condition, and I think entirely appropriately we should be asking for it. So I recognise that I haven't delivered on that one, but we can certainly apply a condition were you minded to grant permission that they do have to. You imagine that each of these has an electric point getting to it, so it ought to be relatively simple. So yes, a condition would be ideal. No, I would accept that.
Good question, Councillor, but what we can do is confirm with the applicant's agent that we can pursue that along the lines that Vincent has just said. Councillor Norris first, then Councillor.
Thank you. My question relates to emergency vehicle access. Looking at the layout plans, it doesn't appear to me that there is any alternative access other than the single access that is shown, which is serving both Wicksfield Park and this proposed development. Is there intended to be any provision for emergency vehicle access?
If we could go back to the presentation, please. I might have, in my explanation, I might not have been as clear as perhaps I should. So, in terms of this proposal, the access is here, which gives you access to this part of the site. Wicksfield Park has its own access here.
Yes.
They are not connected, but in terms of emergency vehicles, you would only expect to access points where there is more than 150 dwellings. And in terms of the layout, of course, this is one of those interesting cases where planning has a certain remit, but also the licensing authority, which is Mid-Suffolk, also deals with the layout under the Caravans Act. So they would have to also ensure that emergency vehicles, particularly fire engines, can get to every one of those units for the obvious reason of fire safety. So we are satisfied that this would allow access by emergency vehicles, and the number of units is low enough not to require a second vehicular access.
Fine, as long as we're happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Muller, for bringing up the point about EV charging points. I've got a sort of few more questions really about along the same line really. This is a substantial residential development of 69 homes.
Just stick to the questions and get
Yeah,
to it,
I
please.
just need to put a context into it. And with the developer, we'd be normally expecting some sort of move towards how its environmental impact was mitigated. So we'll be asking questions about heating and cooling, resilience to extreme weather, compliance with building regs, rainwater harvesting, positioning of the homes with regards to fitting of EV cells. Because this is, these are park homes, does this put the development outside all of these considerations?
I think in terms of you as a planning committee, you're perfectly entitled to ask the applicant and their agent the extent to which they are looking to meet your green requirements. So I think we do have a speaker this morning. I think it's the ideal opportunity to ask, and if you get an affirmative, we can then think about what conditions might you want to add to ensure that we get some of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for the officer? No. Right. We now move on to public speakers, and we have the Great Bricett Parish Council, David Payne. I know there is another gentleman here from the other parish council, but they have made a representation in the papers. We weren't asked to have an extra speaker, and I think members know that we often have large applications and we don't allow all parish councils to speak for the 3 minutes. So in this instance, we will just have the parish in which it is entered, and that is David Payne to speak on behalf of the parish, please. Thank you very much.
Morning, can you hear me? Well, I'm pleased you can, because I'm of a certain age, nearly 80, and my hearing isn't what it should be, but I try to follow what's being said. The one thing that concerns me is, buried in this dossier of papers, there's a statement by the applicant pointing out that the incidence or the level of park home provision within the whole of Mid-Suffolk, which is hundreds of square miles, is quite average, nothing, and that therefore this will make no difference. However, this application will double 100% the number of park homes in a village which is designated as a hamlet. At the moment we have 70 park homes in Wixfield Park. At a stroke, if you give permission, that will double to 140. Now, I'm not a planner, but I do know that in planning terms, park homes are not even considered homes in a normal sense of the legal meaning, because they are, in a sense, temporary, and it's no coincidence that park homes have the lowest value council tax band of A, and therefore that needs to be borne in mind, that the people who move here are downsizing, and there won't be young married couples, they will be elderly people, so the relevance of the local school is somewhat not a matter to be taken on board. Also, the parking is barely minimal. In fact, it's a concession by the council officers that the applicant has made the parking provision to his advantage, so that he can get more units on there. That's actually the council officers saying this, even though they don't object to it. So bear that in mind, and we're worried, because I live in this same stretch of road, that the unintended consequences is that, who knows, one parking place per unit, but we live in an age where even elderly people sometimes have 2 cars, and where's that extra car going to go? On the street, I suspect, if necessary. And it's a narrow street, we don't want any more problems there. We already have problems at the end of the road where I live, at a T-junction, where the original parking proposals have proved inadequate on the site I live on. The other, my colleague from Ringshall is here, and they, I must reflect that their main conclusion is, from their point of view, they get a lot of light pollution coming from a park home site at night, which they will see more than we will from the distance, and that affects nature and the well-being of living in the countryside. There's the buses that do run, there's 3 buses a day that run to Ipswich, and there's another 3 other bus routes that run in 2 days a week to Stow Market. So there is some bus provision. The doctor's surgeries are at full capacity at the moment, and the matter is somewhat worrying in respect of doctor's provisions, because I know for a fact for myself how difficult it is to get an appointment. The issue is, is it wise to treat a hamlet where there are 70 existing park homes and double that overnight? We become also an old people's park home site rather than a village. and we're not even, we're a hamlet.
Mr. Payne, you've had 4 minutes actually.
Oh,
Could
right.
you continue to wind up, please? That would be helpful.
I will. I think I've said enough. I'm open to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've just made a couple of notes, and I'm sure members will indulge me. You say this is designated as a hamlet. Is that in the new joint local plan?
Well, I'm only going by the paperwork here. It says somewhere in here that it's...
Yeah, but I think that's in the new
That's
joint
reinforced by Dan Pratt, who can't be here today.
Yeah.
He describes it, obviously he's...
I think that's in the new
It's
joint
in the local plan.
The new joint local plan, which is going through at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well.
I really should have asked the officer rather
If it's
than
going
yourself.
through, it's
Yeah,
sort
okay.
of nitpicking to say whether it is or isn't. It's going to be a hamlet.
Hopefully.
Well, yes.
We're waiting for our joint local plan indeed. Right, members, do you have questions for Mr. Payne, please? Yes?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question on local services. In terms of people living in these park homes, accessing a local shop or a pub, I understand there's pretty much nothing there now.
When you go on the websites, which are generally very out of date, the shop that is mentioned on some websites doesn't exist anymore. It's closed about 4 years ago. So there's no local shop that sometimes is referred to in this application. It doesn't exist. The nearest shop is down in Barking, I would imagine. Not Barking, Needham Market, sorry, the co-op store down the bottom of Barking Road. There are no other facilities. The school, there hasn't even got a school there. There's a school, nearest school is Ringshaw, which you have to walk across fields or catch a bus to reach, well, a school bus. But so the facilities are few and far between. And as regards bus services, unfortunately, Suffolk County Council seems to have a penchant for closing a road somewhere in north, south, east or west every time I drive out around this area. And so the bus services that do exist are frustrating. The irony is that the Suffolk County Council subsidise bus routes. And
I
then
think
stop
you're
them
going
running.
over the
Okay, anyway,
the question.
I've argued the point.
I get the gist of it, and your frustration is you drive currently, and that's the issue, isn't it? Any further questions for Mr. Payne? Anybody? No. We don't have an official objector, but if the gentleman who has come along wants to word his words as an objector rather than as a parish council, can I invite you along those lines? And can you introduce yourself, please? Because you did arrive rather late, and we waited for you, and we started late, so we didn't get your name.
Right, okay. Press the button. I'm Chris Payne. I'm chairman of Ringshaw Parish Council.
Oh, no, Mr. Payne. Oh, did I get the names wrong?
No, you're correct.
We're brothers.
We're brothers, actually.
Oh,
So it's just coincidence. I actually live in... I live in Ringshaw. We think this application far exceeds the levels of services that could be provided for those that are living in the community. As you know, we have the parish has submitted various objections to the plans. One of them is inaccurate statements in the original planning application talking about facilities that are non-existent. We also fear that there will be roads and traffic impact along in our area. And when your colleague, the planning officer, showed the aerial view of Great Bricett, I would say 50% of that view is actually in Ringshaw, because Ringshaw Parish goes into the airbase area. So we do have a concern, and we're quite disappointed that we weren't notified about this application in detail. But the Parish Council did meet, and the objections are basically, as I've outlined, that the infrastructure and amenities impact will, because of the inaccurate statements that have been made, road and traffic impact, and also we're very concerned about the visual and light impact. If you stand, there were some photographs in the original documentation which were taken during the daytime looking across to where Wixfield Park is, but if you stand in the same place at night time, there's literally a row of lights on the horizon going close to existing woodland. And I hope if this application is approved that there will be considerable reflection on what sort of lighting will be put into that site. So we think it's basically too big for the area, and I always thought that Great Bricett was a hamlet. We are basically side by side. We have a lot of common interests with Great Bricett, and we see this is not affordable accommodation. It's nothing like it. It's not open to young people. It's presumably middle-aged people, upwards 50 years of age. The definition of affordable housing, I think, needs to be looked at. It's just a ridiculous amount of mobile homes in a very, very small, confined area. And I think the existing park, business park, was a viable park, but I can see in one of the officers' reports that they're saying that it implies that it wasn't viable originally, but I understand that was not the case. It was a viable business park, but obviously the owners had other intentions for that site. So I think I've said enough. Yeah.
Right on 3 minutes, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the objector as we are terming your good self? Councillor Caston, then Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You said it's not available for young people. Could you just clarify that for me, please?
I do actually think that actually is stated in the documentation that the applicants put in. In the early documentation, I read...
Do we ask the applicant that one rather than your good self?
Okay.
Yeah. And Councillor
That's my
Stringer.
understanding.
Sorry, Chair, I have a question for the officer that's arisen out of what... Is that okay? Mindful of the extant permission that could be implemented and the fact the site it appears in the draft JLP, if this is approved, will these dwellings be part of our annual housing delivery numbers?
That is a good question, and I think what I would ask is perhaps Gemma can contact our policy colleagues just to confirm. Rather than me say something that I'm not sure on, we'll go to the Oracle and find out.
Fine, thanks very much indeed. Thank you for that. Councillor Pratt, can everybody else take off their microphones, please? Councillor Pratt can't be here. Did we get a statement? Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, yes, indeed. I've jumped down here. Questions for the agent? Yes, we do have the agent. Would you like to have your 3 minutes, please? Thank you.
Good morning. Richard Boother from RPS. I'm the agent speaking on behalf of the applicant. As the case officer has rightly pointed out and has emphasised in his report, the site the subject of this application does have the benefit of an extant outline planning permission for residential development for, I believe it's 51 dwellings. The broader principle of residential development on this site in relation to access to local services and facilities, sustainability, impact on the local highway network and parking, drainage and the loss of employment has therefore been established. The proposed mobile homes, however, have several clear and distinct advantages over traditional bricks and mortar houses. The units can be sited, serviced and occupied much more quickly. They require limited groundworks and the noise and general disturbance during the implementation and construction phase is much less because a large proportion of the construction work is undertaken off-site. This means significantly fewer journeys for construction traffic, which would reduce the impact of construction on the area. The type of mobile homes proposed adds the variety of housing stock in any given area, and in particular the single-storey bungalow accommodation is rarely provided by volume house builders. Lack of single-storey accommodation is a major issue across the UK, meaning a reduced choice to those who require or prefer this type of accommodation, which includes older people or those with reduced mobility. The growth in this development is a type of unit beginning to address that balance. With a lifespan of 70+ years, the units require much less maintenance than a traditional bricks and mortar house. Many councils consider some or all of this type of unit to meet the definition of affordable housing. These units tend to be lower cost to the buyer and an equivalent bricks and mortar home, and they allow buyers to release equity and release their existing homes back into the housing market. While the mobile homes comply with the NPPF definition of affordable housing, we are nevertheless making a proportionate contribution towards off-site provision of additional affordable housing in the area. An increase in the number of units on this site above the extant permission will improve the viability of the services that do exist in the area. And as you'll see from the officer's report, the Highways Authority has raised no objection to the additional numbers of dwellings. And as the officer pointed out, we've addressed Committee A's previous queries about bus services, landscaping and drainage. So in closing, the officer has provided you with a detailed analysis of the issues relating to this site and development, and I trust you will be able to follow his recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And members, I can see Councillor Muller has a question for you, Mr. Booker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, can you please confirm what electrical charging points will be available on this site, please?
So if the, it's not proposed across the board, but if that's something that the proposed occupiers like when they're purchasing the units, that can be provided. If the committee is minded to make that a blanket requirement, that's something we can take on board.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The previous question, the comment, these houses are not available for young people. Could you explain that?
Yes,
please?
I mean, just by their very nature, they do tend to appeal to a certain demographic, the over 50s, over 55s, but they're not necessarily going to be exclusively available to that market. But by definition, those sort of single-storey accommodation does tend to appeal and is tended to be marketed towards that age range.
So the not available part of that isn't the case?
Not necessarily, no.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any further questions for the applicant? Councillor Warboys, please, and then Councillor Muller.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think you probably heard my questions earlier, really, and this is a substantial development that's going to be there for 70 plus years. Normally with a developer, we'd be asking what their plans, the standards to which the houses are being built with regards to heat efficiency, insulation, how they're going to be heated or cooled, how resilient they are to climate change as summers are getting hotter.
Could you actually just sort of sum it up, really, rather than tell us what the whole thing is?
We've already mentioned the EV charging points. I'm particularly interested in what plans you've got for rainwater harvesting, compliance with going towards building regs, which don't apply in this situation, but it's to do with insulation and how resilient they are to climate change. And if I could have some information about that.
Yes, so as I said in my statement, that these units are manufactured off-site. They're manufactured to the highest. There's many products on the market, but they are all manufactured to the highest sort of possible environmental standards. In terms of sort of individual credentials in terms of rainwater harvest, again, they are issues that individual purchasers can specify when they're ordering particular products. But again, if there are particular requirements that accord with the development plan, they're things that the developer can take on board by way of a condition.
And this one, as these have are temporary, they've got a limited lifespan, what arrangements are made for their recycling or disposal afterwards?
They do tend to have a lifespan of around about 70 years. I think in 70 years' time, the requirements for disposing of these sorts of sites, we don't know what sort of standards we'll be adhering to, but I think they are, I think given the materials that they're constructed with, I think there are fairly easy to recycle and dispose of in environmentally friendly ways. In comparison with bricks and mortar housing, I would suggest.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So was it Councillor Mellon next?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to sort of slightly clarify the question, or the point that I think Councillor Caston was trying to draw out, often with these sites, they can only be bought or sold through the kind of management company that's operating the site, and obviously restrictions like an over 50s only can be brought in there. So I wasn't sure if that's exactly going to be a policy for you, because you weren't really clear that.
Yes, as I say, it will be marketed at the over 50s, over 55, the retirement market. But as I understand it at the moment, there are no policies in place in terms of the ongoing management of the site that would restrict it to over 55, but it will actively be marketed at that demographic.
And do these homes, do they come onto the open market, or does it have to be bought and sold through the management company?
They tend to be sold through the management company, but access to that would be through the open market.
Excuse me interrupting on that one. I just asked the legal person, can we actually put a condition in that says that it should be for open, or is the applicant entitled to? I know he's entitled to advertise. No, I'm sorry, you can't speak. I know the applicant is entitled to advertise how he so chooses, but I just wonder.
So on the application as it's presented and the officer's recommendation, it's not proposed there be any condition or section 106 to do with age. And obviously if it were any member suggested that there'd have to be some kind of policy or justifiable basis for that, obviously if that was suggested on the floor of the committee.
Could you sit down, please? We have social distancing, and I'm sorry, we can't have great debates in the chamber. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that last bit.
Yeah, just to say, Madam Chairman, I think the committee's got the point that there's no, in your papers, there is the applicant is not suggesting, as you say, it's if they wish to advertise at a particular demographic, if that's the right word, that's their choice. That's their commercial market choice. It's not suggested in the papers you have, either by the applicant themselves or by the officers making the recommendation that there be any condition or section 106 obligation restricting the age or other demographic of the intended occupiers of these units. But if it were to be suggested that should be the case, there'd need to be a justification in acceptable in the planning law. I'm sure Mr. Pearce and Mrs. Walker could give advice on that if necessary.
So basically you're saying steer clear of that. Vince, you wanted to speak?
I was merely going to say that I think your question was, can you attach some sort of restriction? Technically you could, but as Mr. Dupre has said, you would need the justification. So if you are thinking that this location is not ideal for children, that might be sufficient for you to suggest that there should be an age restriction on this site if you were so minded. If you wanted it the other way, you wouldn't restrict it. So the answer to your question is yes, but it's whether or not the committee is so minded or would actually like it to be available to everyone.
Councillor Stringer, sorry, I did try to tell you to put your hand down.
That's fine, it's fine. Thank you, Chair. Two questions. They didn't come out of the early one. How are these dwellings going to be heated? Because if we're just to put you in the picture, if we're looking at bricks and mortar, we normally put implications on it.
No, let's just ask the question, which is how they're going to be
heated. And are these properties mortgageable?
I believe they are mortgageable, and they will be heated by gas or underground LPG tanks.
Sorry, and then coming back, and then after 2035, how will they be heated?
I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the last part of the heating.
Yeah, gas or underground LPG tanks.
Right, thank you. But I have a question which comes up about what we just said about the age demographic that we're going to... do these park homes comply with accessibility?
I think he's thinking of disabilities for people to get, yeah.
Yeah, again, they're manufactured off-site to the specifications of the purchasers. So if there is a particular requirement for particular accessibility needs, then they can be incorporated into the units that are put on the site. And they can be readily adapted as they change ownership over time as well.
Thank you. And Vince, did you have another comment to make about the issues we were talking about earlier or not? Because
yes, please,
I think we're almost entering debate here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think I might be straying into debate then. But Mr. Booth has said gas or LPG, and I think the mood of the committee, or the feeling of the committee, is with the date looming where gas boilers are no longer allowed, and with this development probably taking a number of years to be implemented, were it to be approved, I think we do actually need something from the applicant that sets out what the strategy will be going forward in terms of energy, heating, the points that
yeah, I think
Councillor
you are
Warboys
straying
brought out.
into debate.
Okay.
I think
Then
members
again,
need to bring that
members
one up.
might want to think about conditions. I'd be quite happy to deal with that under that heading.
Very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. Right. So I think we really are now straying into debate. So who would like to start the debate off?
Chair,
Sorry.
I have a
Did you get a
from-
statement?
I do have an old statement from Councillor Pratt, which I believe is still relevant as we haven't had anything new. It refers...
I think that's fair enough.
As we haven't received anything new, I would suggest that it's still the most up-to-date and relevant in that regard. However, I would just add that it does relate to 73 prefabricated homes, which was what one of the previous references was when it came before committee. However, I don't believe that's a significant change on what is here, but I'll read it out anyway and members can make their judgment based upon that. So the proposal to the site 73 prefabricated homes on Great Bricett Business Park is unsustainable in this location, and the scheme does not represent a low-cost form of housing compatible with affordable housing as claimed. There are not many homes that are both affordable and available to young people in Great Bricett. In the current proposal, the new homes would be available to only to the over 55s. This excludes the younger demographic and first-time home buyers who are the most in need of affordable housing. The plan not only fails to deliver effective housing solutions for local people, but compounds the problems of living in the countryside, adding pressure to already inadequate facilities. Within the settlement hierarchy, Great Bricett falls under the hamlet classification, the class with the lowest allocation of new housing. This is partly because it does not have a shop. The application erroneously refers to the existence of the closed spa shop and other necessary facilities needed to accommodate larger growth. Our emerging joint local plan acknowledges that the location is unsustainable for the large-scale developments such as this one. The NHS statement shows that the local healthcare centres in Bilderston and Needham Market are running near or at full capacity, whilst the target age group for the residential site is not specified. Similar developments target over 55s, which should be taken into consideration on the issue of local services. Should the committee consider approving this application, would they consider applying a contribution to the provision of additional health services in the vicinity? To my best knowledge, there has been little, if no, support for the scheme from the parish council or wider community in Great Bricett. Much of the objection stems from the fact that the development scale and lack of services to support it, but also poor accessibility. While Suffolk County Council Highways Division does not feel that the additional dwellings would add to the congestion on the road, this issue remains a source of great concern to the community. Pound Hill / the street is fairly narrow for two passing cars. The road opens into a nearby junction with Roman Road, following a very sharp bend, and has very poor visibility of the oncoming traffic turning into the street. To add to this hazard, there are often cars parked near to the junction. Additionally, new residents would be mostly dependent on private transport, and there is an inadequate provision of parking spaces. with 1 parking space per resident. There are concerns that the lack of parking provision would result in residents parking on the street, which would further compound issues relating to road access. An additional concern is that the road near to the site entrance is frequently flooded. Every year, residents report multiple occasions of flooding on the highways reporting tool. The site has poor drainage, and the planning application does not provide adequate detail on surface water drainage systems. Whilst the land may be considered as brownfield land, the business park that was closed only in 2020 provided valuable employment space. Whilst I am requesting that the planning committee reject the planning application, I would like to suggest the site be repurposed for a mix of smaller scale residential and commercial development. The village needs a small number of affordable housing that is inclusive to all age groups and commercial space that could contribute to the delivery of public needs, such as a shop, community allotments and green open space. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Well, obviously things have been superseded since then. So, because Vince, did you not tell me there are 2 parking spaces per thing? So that's superseded. Cllr, page 31 of the previous thing, says that contribution to the GPs would be sought to mitigate the impact. So that's superseded. But clearly, many of the issues, members have sort of queried it. And it is unusual to have an old statement, but it was pretty relevant. But
yeah, I think it's the best that was available, Madam Chair.
Exactly. So, but it would have been helpful to have just had a wee bit of an update. But most of it did seem to have some content that we've already inquired about. There we are on that, and we are now open to debate. And I can see Councillor Stringer itching to get going.
Well, I have yet another question. I'm really sorry, but
can we move on?
For the officers, well, yeah,
right,
but
yes.
it's important that I understand. I don't fully understand this application, and this question may help me fully understand.
I'm sorry about that. We've had some good debate so far.
So,
Vince, if you would like to answer the question.
The answer should be really simple. It's about land ownership and how it stacks up. The only circumstance that you can get a mortgage on a park home is when the park homeowner owns the land that sits underneath it. If it's leased, you cannot get a mortgage. So therefore, this application, does that seek to have individual land ownerships for this as a normal housing estate, or is it that split model where there's 2 ownerships? And is that conditional?
Yeah, if I may, I mean, I think, yeah, Councillor Stringer was quite right. I mean, a mortgage to a solicitor is a loan that's secured on a legal interest in land. So, yes, you can have obviously many people, I'm sure people in this room have owned flats with mortgages, but then they have a legal interest. They have a long lease usually, a very long lease usually. But, so, yes, it's a long time since I did any conveyancing. I never did anything to do with mobile homes, so I don't know the details of mobile home finance. But yes, I think I take Councillor Stringer's point. There must be a legal interest in land to charge with a mortgage.
So that was why I was seeking clarification, because traditional park homes, you do not own the land. The agent said you'd be able to get a mortgage, therefore it must be the second model where each landowner has the individual land interest in each individual plot. And that's what I was asking, is that what we're being asked to prove here? So it'd be like a normal house, or is it the second model where it's leased and you cannot get a mortgage?
And can I ask a legal question? Is that relevant to planning, that we should be deciding whether they can or they can't get a mortgage?
I mean, the short answer is not really, I think, Madam Chair. But I think Councillor Stringer is making a point, if I may say so, about the likely outcome of if permission is granted, and that's not irrelevant. I really don't. It's a bit irregular. Do you want to invite, if no one in the room strongly objects, do you want to invite the agent to add anything to what he's already said? It's up to you, Madam Chair. But
only if he's got something substantial rather than imagine. Advise us properly.
No, as the planning lawyer rightly pointed out, it's not strictly speaking a planning matter, and I don't have any great expertise in that matter. If there is those that understand these models better than I do feel otherwise, I'm happy to retract that statement that they are mortgageable.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, so did you want to continue with the debate, Councillor Stringer, as you're on a roll?
Well, we can't go into debate yet because the pivotal question I want the answer to, I haven't got the answer to. Will these count in our housing delivery numbers?
That is the question that we're trying to get an answer for, but
I'm literally just waiting for a reply from Robert Hobbs, so hopefully we'll get something on that very shortly.
Right to the answer for one question. I think we should start the debate because I'm sure that won't be final critical issue. Councillor Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think these kind of houses really do have an important place. They're obviously where older people can release capital and live in a smaller, more efficient size house. There's some really good community in these places. People socialise and they get and they do a lot of things together. I've actually visited the most of these sites, like for when I was a volunteer for the ambulance service. They're really intensively high cool areas. Because of the age, the people that there tend to be older. There's we were backwards and forwards to those sites quite a lot. It sort of brings me on to a bit of this application that I'm just struggling with a little bit. We're looking at a brownfield site, so a discount in Cllr. We are charging Cllr, but it's a discounted Cllr. Homes that are easily adapted to be elderly accommodation, which is no Cllr. Please stop me if they can't be adapted like that. But short of a ramp, that would be no Cllr on the site. We've got not enough healthcare provision in the area to cover this site, and we're looking to deal with that with a Cllr payment. Also, we've got a site that ambulances from Stow Market would have to go right round the base to get to. So healthcare provision on this site is like a big worry to me. I'd like to know whether I'm not right in saying that these houses can... It seems to me like if somebody orders one of these houses, they can order it with a ramp, with complete disabled, everything for disabled access, everything to make it elderly accommodation, and then be Cllr-free on that. If that's true, please let me know, or if I've got that wrong. But this is a problem. There isn't enough healthcare provision for the people in these houses, and they will need a lot of it. They're very high risk people. So in favour of this type of development and what it brings and how it frees up large family homes, but this particular one, I'm really concerned that there's not the provision in place.
Thank you for that. Was it Councillor Muller? Did you have your hand up? I can't remember. I'm losing the plot. I'm sorry. Your comment being you shouldn't really be entering the debate, but...
There was just a question raised by Councillor Caston, and I think I can answer.
Oh, if it's a question, then please do. Yeah.
Fact. Whether or not Cllr is applicable in this particular case, and as I say, our colleagues say it is, but if it isn't, Cllr is a pool of money that is available across the district, and therefore the CCG can draw down funds from our pot, from the Cllr pot, in the normal way to provide additional health care. Anyone can draw down for that purpose across the district. So whilst this may provide no or a little or a large amount of Cllr, the pot is much, much bigger, and the CCG can draw down from that depending on need.
Yes, I wonder here whether paragraph 120, subparagraph C of the National Policy Planning Framework gives substantial weight to the value of using suitable brownfield land within settlements for homes and other identified needs, and support appropriate opportunities to remediate despoiled, degraded, derelict, contaminated or unstable land. We've been told this is part of a brownfield site, so that would probably apply. Secondly, I am concerned about the EV, the actual electrical vehicle charging points, and if the committee were moved to approve this application, I would certainly like to see a condition added into that, if that is possible, please.
That's fine, but we have to remember that this site has an extant position, permission, I can't say it, permission, one of them. Yes, Gemma, sorry, I've got hands going up.
No, that's fine, thanks. I just have had the response from Robert Hobbs, if I can come in
yes,
on that
please,
point now. Is that okay?
Please, that would be helpful.
Thank you.
To move the
yeah, so he has confirmed we don't count it in our housing land supply numbers. The Housing and Planning Act does recognise mobile homes as having a role in contributing to the supply of housing. So if it's for the 51 dwellings with the consent, it would be in the AMR, whereas the 73 mobile homes, 69, would not be included in the number. Hopefully that answers that query.
Does that help, Councillor? Yes, good. Now, who else had their hand up before Councillor Stringer? I think Councillor Norris, go for it.
Thank you. I know the area very well, and I do not believe that the local infrastructure can accommodate this proposed development. There's a limited bus service, the local shop is closed, the nearest school in Ringshall is not easily acceptable on foot due to lack of continuous footpaths. Development will be very car dependent, adding to increased traffic movements on narrow roads. For these reasons, I cannot support this application, as I do believe that it is sustainable in the true sense of the word and would be overdevelopment considering the lack of local facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norris. Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. I've got concerns about the impact on the local infrastructure. In particular, as Councillor Caston mentioned, the accessibility of healthcare. I would like to say I'm not averse to non-traditional methods of construction. I'm not averse to homes being built in factories. I am aware that they can be built to a really high standard in terms of insulation, heat efficiency, and so on, and in terms of recyclability. But I would like to see what conditions we can attach to this. In particular, the ongoing strategy for heating and cooling. I think this sort of underground propane gas heating, I think, is really contrary to what we're trying to do as a district council in working towards net zero. I think we do need some conditions attached with regards to lighting to reduce the impact on that in the environment, and the biodiversity. I also think that this is a very substantial development. I think we do need to look at sort of how, as a developer, what conditions we can attach with regards to rainwater harvesting in terms of sort of flushing toilets, and which could be done as on a communal scale rather than as an individual property. I think it is a bit, I'm thinking on a larger scale than rainwater butts, rather than some substantial reservoir for storing water and making it available to the units for flushing toilets and whatever. So I think that's my point. I think this proposal needs developing in order to make it, for me, to make it sort of really something I could support. Thank you.
Just on your few comments there, it does say on page 26, lighting and design scheme, wildlife, and it also says biodiversity, so there are things moving forward in your line of vision on that. But I just make that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing those points up. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Stringer, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry to be pedantry about the answer to the question about the housing need, but that for me is absolutely critical in my determination of this application. I would straight refuse this application. It's going to do nothing to deliver the housing identified in any of our plans, or count towards the housing number. If we've now got a deficit in our housing delivery number, we're going to have to provide them somewhere else. Or we're going to be in deficit of our housing delivery number, we then lose our 5-year land supply. This is absolutely critical. There's a perfectly good extant permission here to build houses. Houses that will deliver for everyone in our community, and a housing number up to 35% of 50 homes would deliver 15 homes, at least, that are genuinely affordable for everyone in our society, not just people that are downsizing on a property that they can't get a mortgage on. I see absolutely no reason, there is no benefit to anyone to provide doubling the amount of these kind of homes in this area. And it will put our own plans in deficit. So frankly, I have no hesitation in refusing this application because it's totally unsustainable.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My parents live in one of these park homes, not on this adjacent site, but elsewhere, and I'm actually quite in favour of them. They're warm, they're fairly efficient, they can be built well off-site and brought on site, and you can obviously do things like collecting rainwater in your water butts, perhaps not on the scale that Councillor Warboys is talking about. But then when you start to look at this site, I really struggle with it a little bit in terms of it being a sustainable location. I totally realise we've got an extant permission here, but if we were looking at this as a greenfield site, we'd be really having some big question marks over it. In terms of local services, shops, things that people could walk to primarily, because a lot of the older people who live on these sort of sites don't drive. You know, I'd feel much more happy about this if the operators of the site had provided a little on-site shop where people could get their supplies. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. And then when you start to add in things like the fact that they're going to be using gas to heat them, rather than looking in a bit more forward direction, it does sort of raise quite a few question marks to me. But I'm happy to hear what other people have to say. Thank you.
Well, I think most people have said their bit, haven't they? It's only me. I mean, I have listened to many of the issues that people have. Some of them I take on board and agree with them. The previous permission, I just wonder why it was never built out. And I could just ask, when does that extant permission run out? Do we know?
Give me a moment, Chair. I'll just quickly check on the planning history.
And just while you're looking for that, I mean, I too, like Councillor Mellon, look at these, some of these park properties, and they do look very smart and very appropriate for that type of living. It's a shame it's a bit of the arguments about being restrictive. Let's sort of leave that to one side. They do seem very nice homes, and that's what people need, is homes.
6th of January 2022.
Oh, right.
So in the new year.
So here we are. Does anybody want to make a proposal about anything or whatever, so that we can move the debate forward, because we've got to go one way or the other? Councillor? Yes.
Richard, just to make that clear, that is when the time for reserved matters expires.
Ah.
So it would, if they were submitted before 6th of January 2022, there would be another 2 years after that. So that's the deadline for submission of reserved matters. It wasn't outlined.
And that was for 51 dwellings as such. And so these are different applicants on the site. Right. Okay, so Councillor Stringer, I think you put your hand up, didn't you?
Yeah, just to help debate, really. I would propose moving refusal on this because I believe this to be, in our own policies, unsustainable development. There has been no case made that their park home site is needed within this area. This has been designated and has approval for general needs housing that would promote sustainability because there would be a mixture of tenure, mixture of sizes, and something that would help every member of society. And we've allocated this in our plans for housing to approve something that's mobile and mobile home type park home is not within our policy. They should be done on an exception basis when a need has been established. The need for these has not been established here. But the need for general housing has been. And the knock-on consequence of not delivering the houses in our supply numbers by not developing this site as we've planned will cause a burden elsewhere. More greenfield will have to be developed elsewhere if this is approved in this form.
So what is your proposal?
That we refuse this application. Unsustainable development. That this is required for general needs housing as per our joint local plan submission.
Councillor Norris.
Yes, thank you. I am happy to second the proposal for refusal of this application. I think Councillor Stringer has put very well all the salient points, so I won't add anything further. Thank you.
If anybody wants to speak to the motion, I would just make a comment that if we build houses as such, how does it become more sustainable for the doctors, the footpaths, the bus services and so on? I just find that a little bit in conflict. And Councillor Caston?
For me, that we talked about the SIL money. This to me is a sink for money, for SIL money, for healthcare provision. We should be, if we were creating houses, they would be paying for a lot more provision than these are. I think the sustainability side of things, I think Councillor Stringer's got a really good point with that. It does seem that this type of site is for a certain type of person, and we don't have that provision. With houses, you get a far more mixed group of people that are able to travel to the shops, able to, they perhaps don't need as much healthcare or as intensive healthcare. So for me, I think sustainability is a massive issue on this site because it's mobile homes, because of the resident that it's aimed at.
Anybody else wish to? Gemma, yeah.
Masha, thank you. It was just to come back, I think we might need to develop the reason a little further, and I'm slight concerns. Obviously, we have allowed 51 houses here. I assume, I might ask Vince to come in here, on the basis of its location, we have accepted that this is a sustainable location. So we've got to consider that as a material consideration. And I would also perhaps invite the policy basis on which we're looking at, and also caution weight on the JLP. Obviously, we're not in a position where we can give that weight. I absolutely appreciate the concern going forward about our numbers, but at the moment that's not an adopted policy that we've got to use, unfortunately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, that was my doubts when I said we've already, how does it become more sustainable or less sustainable when we've already allowed it? Would you like to give the policy to Gemma that you wish to amplify on that?
Well, the policy comes from the definition. These are not houses, these are not dwellings, because we're not counting them in, we're not allowed to count them in our number. So it has fundamentally changed. And all of the things that flow from sustainable development suddenly become unsustainable. As dwellings, they're available to anyone that wishes to mortgage them, or those that can't, because some of the element would be genuinely affordable. Okay? Up to 35% would be genuinely affordable on this site.
Yeah, but you've made those points.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm asking you to help Gemma to put what the council can defend on, the policies. That, that's what she's just asked you for.
It is very difficult because these are no longer houses. the fact of the matter is, if every
Can
single...
you let Gemma just respond?
sorry.
Because we really need to sort of bottom this out.
Yeah, I just want to go back. So I was just rereading what Robert Hobbs had said. So he says it doesn't count to our land supply numbers, but the Housing and Planning Act 2016 recognises mobile homes as having a role in contributing to the supply of housing. So we've got to give that a balance of it. They are saying it does contribute to the housing, albeit I see your point, it's somewhat different, but it's that really difficult line, unfortunately.
And in the MPPF assessment of such parks, it says where there has been a need demonstrated. And there has not been a need demonstrated here for this type of development, which is by definition restrictive in its tenure. You cannot get a mortgage on these. The reason, there's normally restrictions, you can't impose a negative restriction on a permission, but that's where the problem comes in the imbalance in sustainability.
So are you asking Gemma to put in there because they can't get a mortgage? This is one of your reasons. Is that what you're asking her to put in and
because
defend?
they're unmortgageable. It's an unsustainable... If all of our housing stock converted to this type of tenure, we would
there's
be...
quite a lot in Suffolk going on these bases. But can you give Gemma the meat on the bones, not just your passion, which I hear and I applaud, but, you know, will this stack up with what we've got so far, Gemma, as a refusal?
I have to admit I'm struggling with that because I'm not coming up with a policy on which this is contrary to.
Well, it comes down to if there is not a policy that doesn't allow a developer to restrict, to build something that's unmortgageable, only targeted at a certain section of society by policy, then there needs to be a policy that does happen. I thought the policy was in the MPPF that park homes should only be there if a need had been demonstrated.
So is that what you could ask Gemma to
Yes.
Gemma, can you?
Because it is accepted by the MPPF that general needs housing and the affordable housing within that contributes to a sustainable society. Because you have every strata of society there, you have children, you have the elderly, you have the possibility of people helping each other.
Councillor, I accept your passion, but we've got to put it into words that is defensible, that Gemma is struggling with you on this. I mean, I don't make the policies. We sat on the policy team, maybe we should have popped a policy in about it that could hang our hats on. But I hear very clearly what you're saying and I understand the passion of it, I really do. Councillor Muller, because we must move the debate forward, but,
Thank you, Chair.
but if Gemma can't come up with something, then we've got a very weak reason. Councillor Muller.
I fully appreciate Councillor Stringer's passion on this, but I personally am really struggling myself to come up with a refusal on this. And I think the sticking point for me that planning permission has already been granted for 51 properties. I think we're on a very, very sticky wicket, Chair. Very sticky wicket, I'm afraid.
Yeah, because if we're using unsustainability, it's on that. But I again hear what Councillor Caston was saying, well, and your good self, Councillor Stringer, that if we have properties, we'd get more sill, we'd get more this, that and the other, but there's a sill pot that we can all draw on. It's a real conundrum, and it's very valid points that are all being brought up. But we've got to think of the council, and what we're here to do is to come up with the right decision, and I know that sometimes is at conflict with one another. All I ask is, Gemma, if you've got... I don't know, I've never come across this, I need a legal piece of advice, is if the planning officer can't come up with a reasonable resolution, what do we do with the what do we do with the situation?
Obviously, it's for the committee to make its decision. We officers give advice. The committee makes a decision. It's not, as is very well known in this room. I don't need to say that's democracy, obviously. But I think that the committee must obviously be mindful of that any reasons for refusal need to have a proper basis under planning. I don't know, is it...
Would this be one of those cases where we withdraw for, we look at the, what's the word I'm looking for? You can help me on this, it happens on other cases.
Well,
if we overturn an officer's decision.
There have been, I think it's more common in other districts in Suffolk and possibly, but there have been instances, as you know, I also work for West Suffolk Council, and they have a protocol that you don't have here, where there is an adjournment for a risk assessment.
The brainstorm there that I had that I couldn't think. Would members feel more comfortable, I'm throwing this into the pot, not usurping Councillor Stringer's and Councillor Norris's proposals? Would it be better if we have a risk assessment withdraw that we're minded to refuse, but dealing with a risk assessment?
That's a possibility, Madam Chairman, if the committee wishes, but it's...
And would Councillor Stringer have to withdraw his proposal,
well,
and we reword it on those lines?
Indeed, and it's obviously Councillor Stringer and his seconder's prerogative to say yes or no to that, indeed.
Councillor Stringer, do you gel what we're trying to say? Is that we maybe need to do a risk assessment, you know as well as I do, if we overturn officers' recommendations. It is something we could consider, would you?
We do that relatively regularly. In terms of, I mean, we have adjourned before.
Yeah, but the officer's having difficulty in finding a really strong case. It's a real difficulty because we've already got an extant position which says it is sustainable.
Yeah,
now
but the problem that we've got, that in the eyes of the government, in approving this, we then get rid of the delivery that we approved in the first place.
I'm not disputing what your issues are. I'm trying to get a resolution that we come up with a sensible outcome for the council, for the people sitting here, and for us as judges, as it were.
What I would suggest, through you, Chair, is were you minded to ask for a risk assessment, it would allow us to get chapter and verse from our policy colleagues and actually ask them to be party to the report and actually come before you next time with their view.
That sounds quite sensible, because for me, it being part or not being part of the housing delivery was critical.
And that's where I was trying to come from, and that just sinks it. So on that basis, we can word it a little bit better, but we'd leave you to do that if you wish, Councillor Stringer. But would you withdraw your current proposal on this basis, and we'll reword it?
On the basis that this report was written without that knowledge, I'm prepared to withdraw.
And Councillor Norris, would you be happy as seconder to do that at this point?
I will go along with the suggestion of the risk assessment, yes.
Right. So, Councillor Stringer, do you want to put it, how is it that we are minded to refuse? Yeah.
Subject to risk assessment of the policy framework.
Does that help?
Absolutely, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so my note at the moment is the committee are minded to refuse subject to a risk assessment as the proposal fails to deliver housing with an appropriate mix of tenure and size. Was that the...
And meet the, I think it was, and meet the, she did say size and mix.
Yeah.
Do you want to read it out clearly, and then we'll ask Councillor Norris if he would be happy to second that. Do you want to read it again?
Thank you, Chair. So, committee are minded to refuse subject to a risk assessment as the proposal fails to deliver housing with an appropriate mixture of tenure and sizes, with particular regards to the impact as a result of the neighbouring properties. Does that capture the concerns?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, Councillor Norris seconds that. So on that basis, at the moment, we are deferring it. So thank you, everybody, for the input on that.
Sorry, Chair, about that delay there. So just to confirm that the vote will read that application DC 20-05587 be deferred and minded to refuse for the reasons as read out by the area planning manager. Is that acceptable to the proposer and seconder? If you want them worded, then you'll...
Are you happy for her to have read out?
I was happy with what Gemma had read out, yeah.
You don't need it in this proposal here.
Just to be clear, the full wording that Gemma has read out will be put in the minutes. It's not. It's just for the vote that's in modern.gov, so that it's...
I think we're all aware of the reasons.
In that case, then.
Okay, Chair. If that's acceptable, then I will now start the vote on that. So the vote is now in progress. Chair, can I take your vote?
I'm agreeing with the deferral.
So 4. Thank you. Apologies, members, it hadn't started there. So if members could please go to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of today's agenda and go to the plus sign, go on the subsection on attendance/voting, and the vote will be shown in a light blue colour. Thank you, Chair. That is a unanimous vote for the proposal for Mudder to refuse.
Thank you. And can I just remind people that this matter will come back to committee again. It may come back to A or it may come back to B, because previously this one went to A, and so, it may come back to A or B. It just depends how it sits. And also, if members wish, or members of the public wish to speak, could you please make your representations. I might not be the chair on that one, and if 2 parish councils wish to speak, I think it has to be exceptional rules. But could you sort of make sure that well in advance, when it's notified, that you make the appropriate requests? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance. Do you want a 10-minute break? And then we'll start straight away after that, moving swiftly on. Yes. Welcome back, everybody. Let's proceed with the second case, DC 21044458, and we'll invite the case officer, Michael Booker, to introduce the application, please, if you would, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Okay, so this is application DC 21044458, 1 Rectory Road in Wiveston. The application is for the construction of a drop curb and vehicular hardstanding for the benefit of a registered disabled person. The application comes to committee as it's been made by Mid-Suffolk on Mid-Suffolk owned land. Okay, so this is the site in context. The address is marked by the star there, and just to give some context, is between Bacton and Longthurlow. And this is an aerial view of the site. Sort of a mix of dwelling types along a straight road of 30 miles an hour. And just zoomed out a little bit. Again, fairly straight road in a linear residential development. Okay, so this is the site location. The hard standing is outlined in red there. And just not really many constraints in the area. There are a few listed buildings to the west, but they're not to be affected by the drop curb. And the site lies within the built-up area boundary. Okay, and again, just a site layout of the area. So a visibility display was submitted, which gives visibility to the centre line of the road. Highways weren't happy with this and did request a visibility display to the near side edge. And just a close-up of that general layout. So as you can see, there is vegetation along the boundary frontage, which is to be removed as part of the proposal. The access is for over 3 metres in width and at 2.4 metres back. Again, it gives clear visibility to the centre of the road, with the pedestrian visibility of 2 by 2 metres as illustrated in DMA3 standard drawing. However, Highways did request that the visibility display is drawn to the near side edge rather than the centre line. So an alternative display was submitted. However, you probably can't see it on this one, but the visibility display does cross the neighbouring boundary ever so slightly.
Could you just amplify the ever so slightly in centimetres or whatever?
Okay, so on this is the kind of zoomed in version. As you can see on the right hand side, the visibility display crosses by, I think, about 20 centimetres, and on the left hand side, it's by about 28 centimetres. The highways officer did comment that because this is an area of low traffic, that they will be willing to accept a lower standard of 2 metres from the carriageway rather than 2.4. But this is the 2 metre drawing, which does cross by that 20 to 28 centimetres. And there is some general pictures of the site. That's the dwelling there with no current access, and all that planting is to be removed. That's the, as you can see, the neighbouring access. So as you can see, it would be sort of like this kind of area here, just cuts across where it would cut across the neighbour. Actually, every house along this road has an access, some of which are far below the standard of what we are seeing under this application. And there's the site in context with the neighbouring house. So although it is marginally below the standards, we have gone for a recommendation of approval because, given the site in its context, this is probably the best that can be done. And taking the site into the context that it's a 30-mile-an-hour road, it's a wide road and low vehicle traffic with, I think there's been no recorded incidents for the last 22 years along this road. It's not going to create an unacceptable impact in accordance with paragraph 111 of the MPPF. Thank you.
Did the highways send a further, you were going to, I think there was a late paper, wasn't there, or something?
Yes, so that was the comments that were in the late papers yesterday. Requesting
for
the,
which they still held there was a holding objection.
Yes, they did say holding objection, but Gemma, please correct me if I'm wrong, that whilst they say holding objection, we still, they can't issue holding in the same way that...
Yeah, it's not quite the same holding objection as sort of the Environment Agency or Natural England might be able to put in. It's their way of saying we'd like more information. So from my understanding, we had the plan to the centre line. They had a holding objection. They asked for it to the near side edge. We got it to the near side edge at 2.4 metres back, but that clips neighbouring land. They've said 2 metres. That was their request that came in Tuesday, Wednesday this week. We've got that plan. It does still marginally clip the neighbouring properties, but it's that marginal amount, whether that would be an unacceptable impact. Bear in mind, we do still have a clear line of sight to the centre line of the carriageway in a 30 zone with a lot of accesses already onto that road, so it's somewhere where you might expect cars to be manoeuvring, and also it is in use as an access at the moment, albeit it shouldn't be in that potential enforcement issue, but if we enforced, they would be parked on the road. So it's that balance of what is unacceptable harm, and our conclusion is that it's not to a level that's unacceptable. I appreciate often we recommend to members and say, yeah, they don't achieve the display, but I think there are particular circumstances in this case that we think that marginal difference and the fact that they do still achieve it to the centre line would be why we're content to recommend approval. I hope that explains further, Chair.
Yeah, and just one further question. It is for a disabled person, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, thank you very much. Sorry, I've interrupted again. Anybody else have any further questions for the planning officer? I think we've done fair enough. Does anybody want to open the debate for me, please? Oh, are you? Oh, I beg your pardon. You should be over there. Beg your pardon. Carry on. No.
Just to say very briefly, I'm very happy to support this application. As we saw from the slides, the access is in fact in use, and this arrangement we have in front of us, I think, only improves the situation. So very happy to support it.
Right, anybody want to start the debate? Councillor Muller, sorry.
In view that there's no opposition from the ward member, I would actually just move approval on this one and we grant planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stringer?
Yeah, happy to second that, Chair.
Speak to the motion? No? In that case, then I think we can go to the vote, if we may, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vote is now in progress and will be showing in members.mon.gov apps. And Councillor Kathie, can I take your vote?
Yes, I support.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members and public will note that Councillor Mellon will not be voting, as is the procedure for Mid-Suffolk ward members. So just a note there. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and that is a unanimous vote for the proposal.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any site visit proposals?
None requested, Chair.
In that case, thank you very much, everybody. The meeting's now closed. Thank you.